Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you today. Very excited. We got the return of two more guests. Steve, this is your fourth
Yep,
appearance, I think.
I believe
So
so.
awesome. Good to have you. John, coming back. You were on with us way back in the day, like 7 months ago. but,
Yeah, a
but
while back.
it's been a while. So awesome to see you. I'm going to give you a chance to give you a little intro before we get into it. But before we get into anything, make sure you're all liking the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff so that you guys get your email in the morning whenever we go live, which is, well, right now. So that's one way to do it. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments as we are going along, by all means, put them up in the comment section, kind of like this one, so we can engage them. Good morning, Winter Storm. Good morning to all. And other than that, any thoughts or anything off the top of your guys' brains before we get into the conversation?
Yeah, I do have a quick thought because this is a unique opportunity. John was a guest way back in the day, like, wow, so long ago, several months ago. And it feels like we're a completely different podcast platform now compared to when John was on. So I think it's going to be fun for us to have John on. It should be fun for John to see the improvements. But what I'm really interested in, so John, please keep it in mind, the audience won't get to hear the stuff that we talk about in the green room once we finish recording. But that's when I'm going to be interested in your opinion on how, what your observations are from the first time you're on till now. I'm really curious about that. So hold that thought if you can.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And on that note, John, do you want to give us a quick 30, 45-second rundown who you are, where you come from? That way, anybody that hasn't seen you before will know who you are. Go for it.
Yeah, John O'Neill. I live in Collingwood, Ontario. 26 years of service in the Canadian Armed Forces with the Royal Canadian Regiment. Retired back in 2020. Yeah, and I kind of, since I've been out, kind of doing some coaching, some, climbing some stuff, climbing some glaciers, climbing some, some mountains, doing some stuff like that, trying to keep myself busy, trying to find out where I'm at in my life. And yeah, moving forward. I got a beautiful family, a beautiful wife, Tracy, 3 kids. We're all doing well. And yeah, I'm very happy to be on your show.
Awesome. And crushing it on the motorbikes as of recently, right?
Yeah, doing some dirt biking, man. I'm loving it. It's one of those sports. Trying to find something I could do with my son. That's what I was doing. I was trying to, finding that common ground with him, and we definitely found it with a KTM and a WR250, and it's been great, man. And I also realized that it's a sport for people my age. I get out there, and it's all people late 40s, 50s, 60s, all riding dirt bikes, having a blast, smiling.
That's a good environment to be in, I think.
It is. Until you fall off, and then all just smells A535 for the next week.
Shouldn't we buy stock in A535? Like you become 40,
They
and
have
you just got to buy stock into it. So today we're talking conquering vices, and we've been talking about tools and vices all week. So what I wanted to talk about today specifically was how to get a grip on them, and then how to beat them, how to get through them, how to manage them, how to deal with all of that stuff. If there are any thoughts or questions, by all means, make sure they put them up in the comment section, and we will crush it from there. So I'm going to read a quick definition of conquer so that we understand what that really means, and then we can dive into the rest of the conversation. So I have conquer is to gain or acquire by force of arms, to overcome by force of arms, to gain mastery over and win by overcoming obstacles or opposition, to overcome by mental or moral power, which I really like the last two. Those were excellent. Now, when I talk about conquering vices, I'm going to go around the table. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it. What are your first thoughts? Steve, I'm going to hit you first. When I talk about conquering vices, what do you got?
Something that plagues everybody. Everyone has a little vice in their life that they have to overcome, and I look at it as an overcoming an obstacle. And oftentimes I'll tell clients that they're not the only people on earth that it has an obstacle to overcome. So, it affects everybody.
Mm-hmm. John, what are your first thoughts? Oh, you're muted, bud. Hold on. You got to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, one of the first things I think of when I think of vice is an actual vice. It tightens on you until you snap, and that's exactly it's a negative thing that wraps around you and will tighten until you snap, and you have to do some sort of intervention. to get that vice to loosen off.
Absolutely. Shaun, what are your first thoughts?
Yeah, so much like the fellas, there's many ways to think about how to, or what conquering a vice means. And so what came to mind just now is I was picturing a castle. I just snapped into the forefront of my mind, and a horde trying to conquer the castle. And if that horde, either through siege or through whatever form of warfare, conquers that castle, that has a certain element of permanence to it, where it's easily understood that something has been overcome, something has been defeated, something has been taken over and managed. That's conquering. However, I'm just going to throw it out there that conquering has a certain sense of permanence, but all of life is impermanent. And therefore, that that castle can be reconquered again by the hordes if you're not paying attention. So I'm going to suggest that you need to conquer that vice, but then you have to reinforce your castle in order to keep the hordes at bay, because they're always going to want to slip in through the front door or the back door.
That is a great little analogy. I love that. So how do we do that? Right off the bat, how do we reinforce, or how do we re-engage that situation, Steve? Coming right back to you. What do you think?
Well, first, you got to identify that it is a vice against you, right? And whether it's you overcoming it by yourself or you're utilizing help from someone else to overcome it. If you never acknowledge that you have a vice, you're not going to overcome it because it's not a problem for you, or you're allowing it to continue to happen. If you truly want to grow and you want to get better, then you recognize what's holding you back and you start to overcome it. Now, oftentimes, a lot of people will try to overcome it at great means right off the bat, and they typically fail. Like, I don't know, I can't give an example off the top of my head, but I take things when I coach people, small steps, and you just keep moving towards those. And by the time you look back, you're up a flight of stairs, per se, right? And so it's not too much to bite off at once. It's overcoming it at small steps each and every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking in terms of engineering, like you build a bridge one panel at a time, right? You do all the things in terms of breaching or any of that stuff. It's a great analogy. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree exactly. I think it's something you need to identify first, and it has to be the person. And it's usually not the person right away that identifies it. It's usually the people around him that identifies that they have something negative, whether it's an addiction or whatever it is. So I think identification, and for the actual person to want to change that, is definitely the first move in conquering anything. And once you identify it's a problem, and once again, I think it has to be a problem in their life in order for them to want to change it. Because, and I'm going to use alcohol as an example, because as great as it is, when I sit down and my wife tells me, I think you might have a problem, I don't see that. I think it's great. Like, I'm having a ball, I'm hanging with the boys. So I think identifying for me was the biggest thing to move forward. And then once you identify it, then you got to put things in place to overcome that. And one of them for myself is putting something else in that place, filling that void. I think if you're giving something up and not replacing it, it's easy to fill that void again with the negative behavior. So for myself, when I'm in the process of overcoming one, I'm reintroducing another one at the same time. And with that, I'm making my goals, long-term, short-term, medium-term goals. So that way I'm not falling back into that negative behavior, and I'm going to fill that void with a positive one.
Absolutely. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
I do. So something that was just running through my mind is you can try to conquer a vice, and you may conquer it. And as I stated, the vice may come back unless you're paying close attention to it. There's also something else that I've noticed within myself and others, that someone can become fixated on conquering that vice to the exclusion of everything around them. And so they will be so hyper-focused or so laser-focused or so dogmatic that they will miss out on some of the simple joys of life because they've just made too hard of a deal with themselves, which I've done in the past. So let me give you an example. Just yesterday, a buddy of ours, excuse me, Tim Turner, had put up a little Instagram story, and there were 2 glasses of red wine and the red wine was in regimental wine glasses, the PPCLI regimental wine glasses. And he made some comment or verbiage in respect to he was out with his wife on a electric mountain bike ride, and they were at a really nice winery, and they were enjoying a nice afternoon with some nice red wine, and everything was good. And as I looked at that image, I thought, good for you, buddy. Living the dream. Living the dream that you're setting out for yourself. You're enjoying the moment, just got a new electric mountain bike, hanging out with his wife, all of the good things. And though I draw a very straight line on liquor or alcohol, I only allow myself 4 to 6 ounces of scotch per year. And I track that pretty tightly, not like in a logbook or anything, but in my mind, I know that that's my limit, and that's it. That's all. If I would have been on Vancouver Island yesterday, and I would have known that Tim was at a winery, or if he would have said to me, hey, buddy, you want to go for a ride? Let's get a glass of wine. I would have said yes, because I would have easily given up one of my 1 ounce allotments to my buddy. And even though my limit is about 6 ounces per year, I'm not so pedantic. I'm not so particular that I wouldn't think, you know what? On this occasion, this is the right thing, and I'm going to have that 7th drink for this year, because it's important to me to share this moment with my friend, because my friend is important to me. And so I think that we can conquer our vices, but in conquering them, we can create a vice of too narrow of a focus, where we exclude maybe some of the joy of life that surrounds the focus of conquering that vice. So I'm suggesting that if you get it in your mind that you want to defeat alcohol as the example, well, you don't have to go from 0 to 60 in 3 minutes. You can ease your way there, of course. And then once you're there, if the moment speaks to you and you think, okay, I'm going to have a drink with my friend and that feels right to me, as long as you've got a good balance in life, I think that you can move your vices in a positive way rather than a negative way.
I would totally agree. Steve, you got any thoughts on that?
No, it's kind of hitting on the same lines as what I'm talking about, as far as taking something kind of one step at a time, and not just taking a hard right turn or hard left turn towards that, because it becomes too extreme and then it becomes unachievable. And so, just like Shaun's saying, enjoy that life a little bit around you while you're achieving and getting rid of your vice and helping your vice to become smaller and smaller and smaller.
John, anything to add?
Sorry, my apologies. I didn't hear your point, Steve, because my dog was puking, so I had to disappear for a couple of minutes.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
That's good. John, you got any thoughts on any of that?
No,
Not the dog puking, at least. Is it the other stuff?
I understand the dog puke, but I have 2 of them myself. My beagle pukes everywhere. I agree 100%, and I will also add, with conquering a vice, is that such a thing? Can you actually conquer a vice? And I will say that because after you conquer that vice, as we put it, you spend the rest of your life working not to slide back. So did you really conquer it? We're going to deal with the rest of our lives of working on it. Try not to slide backwards to it. And you may have conquered that day, that situation, that event that happened. But you're also going to spend the next, 30, 40 years still working towards that goal. Even though you think you've conquered it, you're going to work towards it. And I use alcohol as an example. When I go out, just like Steve said, if I feel like it's an opportunity where I'm with a friend who's, whether he's having a moment or he just invited me out and he's celebrating something amazing and he's like, hey, you want to have a beer? For sure. There's days out I would probably sit down and have a beer with a friend any day. Like I would never ever turn down a beer with a friend, actually. So I say there's times for that, but just like yourself, I don't, I don't drink. I leave all that alcohol behind, and for good reasons. But there's a time and place that I think I could sit down and have a beer with a great friend and walk away and be able to control that situation for myself and move forward. But I will definitely say, like with all vices, it's you need to work, and you need to work for the rest of your life on those vices. That they could slide back at any moment, and being okay with those setbacks, and I say that being, you're having a bad day and you go out and you had that drink, and maybe you had 2 or 3. It's what you do the next day with that. Are you just going to sit there and be like, oh, it's over, I'm back to being a drunk and I'm going to drink for the rest of my life now? Or you wake up the next morning and be like, hey, you know what, man? There was a bit of a bend in the road. It's not the end of the road. I need to get back on the horse here, and I need to get going. And I think that's what the conquering is. It's not whether you're having setbacks. It's you're willing to work on this for the rest of your life. For me is conquering the vice.
I like that. John, You got anything else? You look like you got something.
Yes, Shaun got something.
Well, I something that I'd like to throw out there as an idea, and again, it just freshly popped in my head, so it's not very well thought out. I'm thinking it out in real time, if you don't mind. So someone on Instagram who follows me, he's a good guy. I don't know him very well. He just put up a post that stated he's been 40 years sober. And in his post, there was a backstory to it, which I won't add, but it's relevant to the story in that he found himself in a position at one time where he had to get his act together and get cleaned up, and now he's 40 years sober. And so that if I would have, when I read that on Instagram, I read it in an entirely different way, only because I knew a little bit of the backstory that he sent to me in my DMs. And so I'll kind of paraphrase what he sent to me in my DMs. And he hit me up with, hey, Shaun, I just listened to a podcast that you were on another podcast platform. I won't name the podcast because I don't want to tie it too closely to him. And so he listened to the podcast. And in that podcast, I was talking about how I think anything can be beaten, and you can dominate anything if you put your mind to it. If it's really, really important, if your why makes it important enough, then you just get to work. And as you work through that problem, you can beat anything if you make it important enough. And so I'd reference my PTSD on how when I was evaluated with PTSD by the BCOSI psychiatrist, I blinked, waited 3 seconds, and then said, good. And she said, good. And I said, yeah, now I know what it is. Now I can get on with crushing it. Now I'm going to start learning about it. Now I'm going to smoke that thing. And so I kind of relayed that in the podcast, as I've done in a few other podcasts. And when he heard it, he said he'd never heard anyone think about it like that before. By me saying what I said on that podcast, it completely inverted the way he considered addressing his PTSD, though he'd already considered how to do it with alcoholism because he'd done 40 years straight. And so he said he finally connected the two, that he could beat this, but he hadn't considered beating that, called PTSD. And my response was, well, my thoughts on it. Nothing is harder than anything else. You've just got to make it important enough that you can beat anything. And so he's off to the races with a whole different mindset, a whole new positive way of addressing his PTSD, etc. Now, I'm not making any claim to solving the keys to the universe. I'm just saying that these simple things that apply to one thing called a vice apply to all vices. Uh-huh. And that all those vices actually can kind of blend into some things in your life that you may not consider as the clean definition of a vice. PTSD isn't a vice, but if you can conquer you can conquer a vice for 40 years, you sure as heck can improve your PTSD this week. And so it was an interesting moment for me when he sent me that DM, because it was nice to know that if someone out there who's casually observing what we're talking about over here can make that connection, then certainly anyone can if we keep delivering the same message, I believe.
It's funny too, because PTSD becomes a vice for a lot of veterans, where we allow it to become a vice, and then it's just, oh, I have PTSD, and it's an easy way to kind of brush off any problem, any difficulty whatsoever, and it, not taking accountability absolutely for it. Steve, you got anything, any thoughts on what Shaun was going over?
I think he's right on point as far as the prioritizing the vices. If you can overcome one, you can overcome another. And I think our ability to problem solve is highly underrated, especially if we put ourselves in that category and we don't allow ourselves to overcome something, because it's easier just to quit, and it's easier to say I can't, and it's easier to say, oh, it's because of, like you're saying, PTSD, if someone has PTSD. I don't have PTSD, I don't think. I've never been certified through it, so I can't really speak onto that. But I'm saying any other vice that you have against you, again, I go back to, you have to recognize it. And then if you make it a priority that you want to overcome it, and I think at some level, there's that word that comes into conquering, right? So I think conquering it, and you still have to work on it, right? Because you don't want to slip back, but you still are conquering. So give yourself some credit for overcoming something, conquering something. And you just make it I like having end states in mind when I talk to clients. There's got to be an end state as to what they want. Same thing that goes with us. We have an end state. If I ever want to overcome this, you work every day to go overcome it. Every day gets better. The more you overcome each day, the next day is even better than the day before.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. John, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I got a couple of things there, actually. As you were saying some of those things, like I definitely agree. I use the competitive spirit all the time, like for myself, and I agree with you. When I go into a doctor's office and when I was diagnosed with PTSD, my first thoughts were, right on. Here's the next challenge. Like, how am I getting over this? And I really, really do embrace it as a challenge. This year I've came leaps and bounds with my mental health, and I bring it back to a very direct therapist that I have, holding me accountable and giving me challenges, and I'm crushing it. I'm eating up his challenges. I'm like, keep giving them. So I agree with you. Make it a challenge, and if you have that competitive spirit, you'll always want to overcome a challenge, no matter what it is. And you know what? I also think when we talk about vices and overcoming the vice, sometimes you look directly at it, and I'll use alcohol, or you can use social media. You can use many different things. What is that vice hiding? What is that vice masking? Because, and I'll say this because I know at work I'd have a soldier show up and he'd be drunk, and everybody's like, you need to sort him out. He's a drunk. Well, he's not a drunk. He actually has a lot of problems going on at home, and he's using the alcohol because he's not sleeping. He's using the alcohol to deal with his family, his outside life, and stuff like that. So the vice, was the alcohol when we looked at it, but there was other problems that were relating back to the alcohol. So I think when we look at a vice, we need to look at why am I utilizing this vice at this time, and what am I trying to hide? What am I trying to cover? What am I trying to make easier in my life? Because overcoming them challenges is not easy. And sometimes we slide into the easiest way possible, which is usually the most negative way possible. We slide that way instead of going and, let's overcome this. Let's use extreme fitness to overcome my anxiety instead of, burying myself in a bottle of rum today. So I think it's choices, but it's also goals. It's also, the competitive spirit, and it's also digging deep and finding out why I'm hiding. What am I hiding from? And what do I need to do in life here to overcome this?
I really like that. Why am I hiding? Oh man, you gotta get you some we gotta get you some headphones so you can we don't have that echo issue. I have a couple comments here, but any other thoughts on that at all? Shaun, you got anything else?
Yeah, I do. And so I just want to draw a comparison between conquering vices and engaging in vices. And so I know that this is not the suggestion that was just made, but I just want to make the comparisons between healthy and unhealthy vices. So alcoholism, unhealthy vice. Extreme working out, healthier vice. I'm not saying it's healthy, it's healthier. And so, and we're, that's kind of funny, but it's kind of important, because if your vice is a negative vice, we'll call it, contextualized against working out, which again can be negative, and I'll get to that in a sec. If you're drinking a lot, chances are that vice has some parallel attachments to it. Let's call it, you drink a lot and then you eat a lot of fast food. And now you're at the bar, and now you've got a sex addiction, and then you're drunk driving. So let's pack all of those vices together, and bam, now you got 5 every night, unless you're paying attention, because the co-association with one vice will lead to several vices if you're not paying attention to the slippery connected slope. Now, take the other example, and we'll use extreme working out. Now your vice is you work out too much, which is a weird concept that I disagree with. You don't work out enough. How about that? But let's just call it you're all working out too much. Now you're an extreme worker outer. Well, that is a vice, we'll call it. However, the co-associated or the parallel things that go along with that one single device of working out too much are positives. Because to work out too much, for lack of a better term, you've got to eat well, you got to sleep well, you got to hydrate well, you've got to start thinking well, you've got to be coached well, you've got to ... well. And so all of the things that are associated with the, we'll call it negative of focusing on working out too much, brings a whole pile of positives along with it. Whereas a negative vice like alcoholism can bring along a bunch of negative correlated. So vices to vices aren't equal if they're at their extremes, because one extreme and the other extreme can bring a bunch of negatives along with it, or a bunch of positives along with it.
That's a great point. Any thoughts on that from the panel? Any guys good? Okay. I have a few top comments I want to hit here just real quick. So KH jumped in here earlier, said agreed, vices are something that erodes defenses, whether mental, physical, or financial, which is a really great point, because they do cross a lot of things. Winterstorm jumps in, conquering a vice is not about matching its intensity with the same intensity of something else. It's about lowering its hold on you and lowering the intensity so you can enjoy smaller things. That's a very neat way. He also adds in here, fighting bears and puking dogs. Shaun has either the best or worst Dr. Dolittle impression. Not sure which one it is. Right. It could be either. KH jumps back in here and says, I've come to realize that conquering a vice takes internal and external accountability. Ooh, that's an interesting question. Do you think it requires both, or do you think it's beneficial with both, but do you think it requires both? Steve, what do you think?
Well, internal, I'm thinking the mental piece of it, right? So how you communicate to yourself and plan for yourself, and external is actually there's a physical act of overcoming something, right, and stopping it. So it's a physical act to pick up the glass and drink it if you want to use alcoholism. But internally, like Shaun's talking about, he only allows himself 6 ounces per year. So internal and external accountability is, I think, 100% on spot on because you use both to overcome it. It's not just one.
John, thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's definitely quite the comment. Actually, I do agree 100% on it, because I think for me, the internal is definitely the mind and how you hold yourself accountable. But the external accountabilities can also be huge. And I say the positive ones, like if you did quit drinking, or if you started exercising, or whatever that vice is at the time, the people around you, the positive comments, great job, good to see that you quit drinking, stuff like that. The external accountability helps out huge, and as well having accountability by pairing up. When I say that, by some people do it for dieting, they pair it up. Or they have the 30-day dry challenge, they pair up with another person. And I think that external accountability is there, especially when you pair up and you make it competitive with somebody else. So for me, I enjoy the external accountability. I enjoy those positive comments from people. I also enjoy the negative comments from people. I love when somebody says to me, "Hey, man, like, you are drinking too much. I think you should." I always listen to those comments, and I really refrain from getting confrontational with them, because I think it's important to hear them sometimes, and take it with a grain of salt, do what you want with it. Obviously look at who's giving you that advice. And but the external accountabilities are huge. I feed off them for sure myself. I enjoy them, whether it's through social media or just my friends every day. I think external accountabilities are positive and negative are good for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaun, any points?
Yeah, I've got nothing to add to either fella's comments. Can you go back a couple of questions? I think it was Winter Storm.
Conquering a vice.
There it is. Okay, that's awesome. So I really like this sentence. It's about lowering its hold on you and lowering the intensity so you can enjoy smaller things. And so I think one of the ideas out there as a generality is people will identify a vice and then proclaim that they're going to beat it, and then try to beat it that day as if it's only going to take a day. But it doesn't. It'll take the rest of your life, perhaps. And so set up an appropriate velocity on addressing the issue that you've identified as the one that you want to minimize and perhaps conquer. So I really like this sentence of lowering its hold on you and lowering its intensity on you so you can start to enjoy a little bit of the life around you in a different way. I think it can be pretty encouraging for someone who's been chipping away at a vice to then wake up one morning and have the realization that they've improved 30%. And it's not always, you can't always put up a little poster on your fridge and strike off another calendar day of sobriety and that is the evidence that you are getting better. Sometimes the universe will just send you a little lightning bolt into the old peanut that says, dude, you're doing better today. Or maybe it's when you open your door and you step out onto your front doorstep and get blasted with the old vitamin D. And the old Mark 1 eyeballs light up and you think, wow, what a gorgeous day. And that's the first time you've said that for maybe 12 years or whatever the case is. So these kind of conquering vices, if it's not just a fire and forget, where you pull the trigger and then know that the round's going downrange and then tune into yourself 12 years later to see how you did. It is not a fire and forget. It is pull and pay attention. It's kind of like an old tow missile where you guide it downrange. And so I think it's important that we don't idealize the future too much as the goal. The goal is today. And so when you step out of your front doorstep, and if you do feel that little sunshine on your cheek and think, man, it's a nice day out today, hang on to that. Because to me, that's the win. That's the proof or the evidence that you are becoming a better version of yourself. Not the poster on the fridge. That's just a record. When you stand out and feel the beauty of the world, that's a sign. I'd just like to draw the comparisons.
I really like that. You guys got any thoughts on that at all? John, what do you got? You look like you were scrolling for something. What do you got?
No, I was coming off mute there again.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I think it's amazing. I agree for sure, and I also think, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. You need to take your time with this. You need to do it right, and you need to give yourself a pass. Like, not every day is perfect. This is something you work on, and you work up until you get to where you want to be, and then when you get to where you want to be, you need to maintain that. And, that's a lot of work, and getting to where you want to be, I don't think definitely does not happen overnight. Like, I've been working on PTSD now for 5 years, and do I have it? No, I definitely don't. But I can tell you one thing, I feel great. I feel happy. I feel like I'm in a better place in life. But I could tell you, I didn't sleep last night. I had a crazy nightmare last night. I woke up this morning. I was on the couch in the basement. I was all messed up. But you know what I did? I got up, I had a shower, I had some breakfast. I went downstairs, had some me time for about 20 minutes. I come back upstairs and I'm like, okay, it's time to get on with my day. Just the way it is. I need to get on with my day. I can't let this little setback of last night ruin my day. Today's my boy's birthday. Get in the truck. We're going to drive 2 hours to get your license. It's not about me today. It's about him. And that right there shows me how far I've come. Because if this was 3 years ago, I'd be still down the basement on the chair. I'd be sleeping down there. I'd be playing a video game. I'd be doing something different. It wouldn't be about my son. It would be about me hiding in my basement today because I had a bad night last night. And you know what? So be it. Had a bad night. I'll get that tonight. I guarantee it. I'll sleep tonight. I'll figure that out and I'll get over it and I'll have a great night. And tomorrow will be a different day. And that's success for me. That's total success. And it's a small setback. I'm okay with it, but I'm just going to move back on tomorrow. It's been 5 years and I'm going to have them days probably in 15 years from now, but I'm still going to keep marching forward and going. And I'm not allowing, and with that being said, I could have used the vice of sat in the basement, pulled out the social media and watched reels for the next 8 hours. Because I'm going to tell you that for myself, when I get in moods like that, they are definitely my vice. I'll sit downstairs and I'll scroll through for hours and you see 4 hours has gone by, 5 hours. And I'm like, why? Why did I just waste 5 hours of my life? I didn't run today. I didn't hike today. I didn't go to a boxing club today. I didn't do anything that I needed to do to advance my own agenda. And, that's not acceptable to me. So every day I get up and I work to advance my own agenda. And the days that I can't, that's okay. I'll give myself the break today, but tomorrow we're back at it.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. That's fantastic.
Why I like it is because I saw your photo with your boy and the license and all of that good stuff. And that's a real positive moment. I love that. But now I love it even more because now I know the backstory. And so the moment that you're sharing with your son on social media, that's cool. But now it's way freaking cooler that I know the backstory. And you know what's really good about that, pal? If it impacted me, it's going to impact someone else. And you being not like transparent about it or being vulnerable or whatever. I mean, you're just telling your reality. You saying that is freaking mega. That to me is an illustration of how everyone can benefit from these kind of conversations. Because I just did. So thanks for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome.
This is this one of the reasons why we got this started, and one of the things I love about it. Any other thoughts at all, Steve? You got anything before I got some more comments here? But
go ahead. You do with comments.
Go with comments. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got. It actually goes very much into this next comment. Carl KH jumps in. He says, "And knowing the triggers for the vice is also a huge factor. Mitigation of the triggers or removal of the triggers helps diminish the vice in my experience." And I totally agree. This was the first step I had to take when I was dealing with my own PTSD. Was I had to figure out what was setting me off. Once I figured that out, I could start backtracking, or I could start avoiding those situations, or I could manage them in another way. Any thoughts on that from the panel anywhere? Shaun, yeah, what do you got?
I do have a thought. It's just a cautionary note for anyone out there. And I feel like I shouldn't have to say this because I think it's understood, but I'm still going to say it just in case it's not clearly enough understood. Be careful with the identification of triggers and how you have to mitigate them. Because you know what starts happening? Then the triggers become the vice. The thoughtfulness of the triggers, of the trigger removal, of here comes another trigger, is now the vice. You're walking around every corner looking for the trigger. It's all about the triggers all of a sudden. Your vices, you've forgotten them. Now it's waiting for the knee-jerk reaction of the response of the thing, of the horn that beeps around the corner. But you go around the corner anticipating the horn beep. It's looking for the triggers all of a sudden rather than mitigating the triggers. It can be a pretty slippery slope of trigger.
That is a great point. Anybody else? Steve, John, anything?
Yeah, I'll add to that as well. I for myself, I have triggers with my PTSD, and for me as my triggers, they're my triggers. And I know a lot of people I'll see and they're like, oh, that triggers me. But I can't expect my triggers to be everybody else's responsibility around me as well. They're my triggers. And I will add this, I'm a very, very, very competitive person. So I challenge those triggers and I challenge them every day of my life. Until they become reality, they become easy. They're still a challenge sometimes, but I make them less of a challenge. And yeah, I face them. For me, smell is a huge one. I have one spot. I won't chat about it too much, but that smell sets me back so far. You would not believe it. I go there every week.
Mm-hmm.
Go there every week.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Steve, you got any thoughts on it?
Well, everyone has their own perspective of triggers and vices and stuff. And so Shaun's pretty on with what I'm kind of thinking is don't hyper focus on just one thing so you can't fix another thing, and realize that what it is that you want to fix, and then just start working towards what you want to fix. If you over sensationalize one thing, everything becomes problematic for that one thing, and just work at it one step at a time. And I tend to look at things in life, and I know it's probably unfair to some people to say it's not as simple as you make it sound, but I'm going to tell you, everyone has issues or vices in their life. But if you can simplify it and not make it complex, complex is a hard problem to go solve. Simplicity in your mind, it's a little bit easier, and you realize that you're not the only one. And so having help from other people helps people, right? But a lot of people believe that they can't do something on their own and they need help. And I always tell clients that you can never discount yourself. You're able to do great things. Human nature has done great things. You're more powerful than you think you are. And it starts with the internal, like that statement, the mental piece of it, right? Acknowledging it. What do you want to do to overcome it? Start working towards overcoming it. It's a process. It's not going to be done in one day, like Shaun says, or Shaun. And so it's you got to work. And then if you find out what happens to you when you smell something and it ticks you, then work on that. But try not to over sensualize with just like one thing.
100%. I have this little thing in my, I guess it's a mantra now that I've said many times, is when I start to get overwhelmed, or I start to make things too complicated, as you just said, which I love, is I ask for this, right? If I want to fix whatever it is I'm fixing, then I'm asking for the work. So if anything comes up that it's like, man, it's going to be hard. Well, I freaking asked for it. All right, let's get on it. I got a couple more comments here. Any other thoughts before we move on? We're good.
Yeah, maybe I'd just like to throw this in based on what Steve just said. It popped open a new idea, and that is, as a coach, some athletes, not many, but they've kind of started discounting their performance, where they're minimizing their abilities, they're feeling like they're underperforming, and et cetera, et cetera. And I understand all that. That's not uncommon. But what is uncommon is when they fixate on it, and I can't get them out of that pattern. And so I have said this almost word for word to an athlete, and it is, do you think that I'm discounting you right now? Do you think that I'm discounting your performance? And of course, their answer is guaranteed, well, no, you're not. Then why are you? Why are you discounting your performance? Because I'm not. So if we're a team right now where we're focused on making you the most awesome version of yourself for the thing that you've identified in the near future, are we back on track? Yeah, we're back on track. All right, execute. And sometimes it's just simple, a paragraph's worth of conversation, not to build it out into complexity, just as Steve said, bringing it right down to simple language, but that simple language has to be owned by the other person on the other end. And so, as Steve said, sometimes as a coach or as a friend or as a spouse or as a willing partner in the conversation with the person in front of us, we just have to bring it right down to simple sentences to get clear, concise, structured, forward momentum path in front of them.
Yeah, 100%. I do love the fact that you're forward momentum coaching, forward momentum.
I don't even think about it anymore.
Little shout out to his old business. Any other thoughts
Which
on that?
I don't do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't coach anymore. I do not
There
coach.
you
Do
go.
not hit me up
There
for coaching.
I just had to put that. I should put that on a little ticker in the bottom. Do not ask Shaun for coaching. Be fantastic. Okay, so we got another couple comments I want to hit on here. Daniel says the importance of having clear intention towards modifying your vices positively towards your own betterment. I do really like this. He carries on with as well, understanding the higher meaning towards the situation or emotional state. 100%. That's knowing your why. KH jumps in, or the understanding of triggers for sure. He says, sober for this moment, an hour, a day, or a week. Moments. Interesting. So here, I have a question on this one. In terms of, if you're going to try to do something, I've heard this many times, is that if you're going to try and, beat alcoholism, I'm going to be sober today, right? And then you wake up the next morning and say, I'm going to be sober today. And it's breaking that large thing down into those single steps, right? You're going to work on these 24 hours. But do you think it's helpful to break it down into even smaller increments in terms of, I'm going to make it till noon, or I'm going to make it till breakfast, or do you guys what I'm saying? Do you think that is a helpful uh, uh, tool to utilize in terms of that, Steve? What do you think?
I would say it depends on how bad that vice is. If it's got such a good clutch on you, you might need to break it down into smaller segments, 100%, because it gives you and everyone's different on how they attack their vices. Some are more mentally strong than others, but if they got to a point where it is a vice, then yeah, if you need to break it down, and it depends on the person, I would say, I would definitely break it down a little bit smaller for them so they can achieve more.
I like that. John, you got any thoughts on it?
Yeah. It's it's funny. As soon as you mentioned that, the advanced reconnaissance course come back like boom in my head, and I got chills down my spine. I got cold. I'm actually a little bit hungry right now, but I think of that course, and I'm not even gonna lie, man. On that 10-day exercise, I remember waking up, and my goals were, I'm gonna make it to breakfast shows up. And when breakfast showed up, I ate the breakfast, and I'm like, I'm gonna make it until lunch shows up. And this is where the thought process, not on day one, not on day two. This is like day 5, day 6, and you know what? I'm gonna make it to supper. And then it became to the point where I'm gonna make it to breakfast, but now I'm gonna make it to the coffee shows up at 10 o'clock. It wasn't even lunchtime anymore. So it was getting smaller for me. Like those increments are getting so small where I was almost hour to hour. But you know what? I made it. I made it through the course. So what I would say about that is I think everybody's so different. And those goals could be a day, could be an hour, could be a minute, could be a month, could be a year. I think everybody has has a difference with that. And for myself, I do day by day for everything. Today was a good day. Tomorrow, we'll see what happens, right? But I stay positive, and tomorrow's gonna be a great day too. So I do have my moments where it's hour by hour, but I try to go day by day. And I'm like, you know what, today, I didn't drink. Today I was very kind to my wife. Today I was very kind to my kids. Today I was a great husband. I was a great father. Today I was a great friend. And tonight I'm going to sleep amazing.
I like it. Yeah. Shaun, any thoughts?
Well, today you just passed your advanced family parenting father awesome dude course. So it's funny that you should mention that, because as I was reading that comment in my own head, the immediate thought that came to mind was my Pathfinder course. So it's funny that you framed yours around the advanced recce course, and haven't done my recce course. It is the suck, and as things advance, it just gets more the suck. And the funny thing about anyone who's served law enforcement or military, served our country, at some point along the way, you end up doing some form of selections. It might be a basic firearms course. It might be an advanced firearms course. It doesn't matter what the course is. But as you progress in your career, you do harder and harder things that have more and more selection in it. And I found myself in several hard things where I'm getting more and more worn down as the days progress, to the point where now it's trying to survive the morning, to the part where it's now trying to survive the hour. Now it's to the point where I'm just trying to put one foot in front of the other, and I'm not sure how I'm managing it. And usually it means I've got to put my nose in front of my knees, so the massive load on my back keeps tipping me over, and I just have to maintain my balance. And so we've all got to do things that are hard in life for sure. But it's why we propel ourselves forward is the thing that keeps us moving forward. And, you know, whether you break it down into a day or an hour or a minute or a second, you do what you do in order to achieve the thing that you want to achieve. And if it's sobriety today, then you break it down into the smallest chunks necessary to make sure you're successful today. But you got to know what you're engaged in. You got to know why you're engaged in it. And today, if it's a sober day, then you've got to make it important enough with your why that you achieve success. So you're on advanced recce course tomorrow. And these are just things that I think anyone who's served already knows. But at some point, maybe we forget how capable we were of moving through difficult things and breaking them down into small elephant-sized problems into smaller and smaller and smaller chunks so that you can eat that elephant. We all know how to do it. Maybe it's not that we forget. Maybe it's just that we forget to believe in ourselves, where we know when we were younger, we could, and now maybe we feel we can't. But I disagree with that mindset. If you can do it once, you can do it forever if you make it important enough. And I think that's the crux of the matter, is making it important enough, having the conviction to follow through with that step after step after step.
I like that a lot. The conviction of it is fantastic. And the Carl jumped in here right after he said building moments of success, and I really like that because it is a building process. It's not just like hey, a moment of success. You're putting the work in to build it. I love that. Then he jumps in here. He says life is full of beautiful moments, beauty in the low, understanding the start, beauty in the high points, knowing the journey through the low. Which I actually, that's quite lovely. Now I have just a general thought on this, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on it, is that as I've been hearing you guys talk, I do want to state, and we haven't stated, I think we maybe misstated this earlier, but everything we're talking about applies to across the board almost to vices in general. So we've been talking a lot about alcoholism, but you can put this on smoking. You can put this into being a better parent. You can put this into social media. You can put any of the tools that we've come up with today apply directly to those other things, just in different manners. So I wanted to just harp on that point a little bit. But what I've been catching from you guys is that basically complex problems are just groups of simple problems, right? If you have something that is difficult in the moment, if you can break it down into something smaller in general, then it becomes an easier problem to solve. Am I on the right boat there?
Well, sure. If we're talking about that's easy to do, but it ain't. Because if it was easy, everyone would be doing it or would have done it. And so if we're taking complex problems and breaking them down into simply applied solutions that move you towards the outcome that you're expecting, and you don't know how to do that, well, now it ain't simple. So if that's you, if you're looking to cross the start line to start conquering a complex problem that you don't understand how to beat, well, we're trying to talk about it over here, but this may not have been enough. And so something that you absolutely can do to move the needle right now, today, is reach out to someone who's done it before. Find yourself a coach who's been through the process. Find yourself a mentor or a guide or someone who will support you, but not just with good intentions, because good intentions are a dime a dozen. I'm talking about someone who knows the process, not cares about you enough to spell process. You got to find someone who can do it for you, do it with you, that has been through it and done it themselves in order to shape your forward trajectory. Because all the well-wishers on the sidewalk as they cheer you walking by are of no value if they don't know how to solve the problem themselves. What they are is well-wishers. And getting well wished is nice. It feels supportive, but it ain't moving your needle forward. It's just making you feel better, but it ain't solving the problem, the complex problem that you don't know how to solve yourself. So please, for goodness sakes, look around you to see who can help you in an educated fashion.
Yeah. Steve, you got any thoughts?
The problem is the goal, right? To fix it. There's multiple tasks that have to be done to fix those. So that's why I say break it down task by task, one step at a time, right? And so if you start achieving those down in smaller segments, one task at a time, you're not hyper focused on the big ass problem out there because it's just too overwhelming, too complex. Task by task, make it easier to get it done. So when you overtake an objective, certain things need to be done to.
I think we might have lost him. Yeah, I think he's frozen. John, why don't you jump in here? What any thoughts you got there?
Yeah, a couple of things. Steve, you had a great point. The coaching, accountability, and I say that because I am a bit weak-minded. I love having somebody that comes along and gives me a boot in the back end every once in a while. And I think that's important. And a coach does that for you. A coach, when I walk in there, knows that I have not been doing the exercises that he gave me. The coach knows that I'm not eating the way I'm supposed to be eating. The coach knows that I'm not shadow boxing. I'm not doing any of this. The coach knows that stuff. And if you have a good coach, someone like take the time and invest in finding the good coach, someone that's going to hold you accountable. So when you walk in there, they're telling you like, hey man, like, what do you expect? You had a clear goal, but you did nothing I asked you to do this week. So you're not going to reach the goal this week. And I think that coach is so key at accountability. Trying to do this on your own is hard. And I think we talked about this earlier. Sometimes it's the competitive spirit is finding someone to do it along with you. And a coach will do that with you. They'll work with you. They'll push you. They'll give you all the tools you need. But it's not going to be easy. And, you got to go through this, and you have to be realistic, and I'll use dieting as an example. As a coach, I see people come in and first thing they say is, I want to lose weight. And my first comment is, that's not what you should be focused on right now. You need to focus on getting you a healthy lifestyle, because once we adopt the healthy lifestyle, the weight comes with it, the mental health comes with it, everything comes with it. And that's an all around healthy lifestyle. That's eating, that's exercising. It's worse than someone walking in and says, I want to lose weight and I want to go running. I'm like, oh, cool. You love running? No, I hate running. Well, why do you want to run? So your goal is going to last 3 days. You're going to go for 2 runs. You're going to be so sore that you will not want to work out on the 3rd day, the 4th day, or the 5th day. And you're already defeating yourself before you begin. So how about we walk? How about we hike? So you add stuff, you make it realistic. And I think that accountability from a coach, and taking the time and all the milestones to absorb the success. And I think that is very, very key in overcoming a vice or overcoming, anything in your life. Taking those moments when you have something positive, whether it's that period where you lost the weight you wanted to lose, or you lift, you deadlifted the weight you wanted to deadlift, or you're in a BJJ a match and you won. Stopping for 2 minutes and throwing that stuff up here in the memory bank and feeling those feelings of success. Seeing how great you feel, see how amazing you feel, see how happy you feel, and taking that time to put it all in there. And in those days when you were sliding and you're like, hey man, I just, I'm going to get the poutine. Stop for a second and reach back into the memory bank, man, and remember what that feels like to lose those 30 pounds. And I think if you sit there and those amazing feelings come back, you'll walk away from the poutine. You'll put it back down. You'll go aside, and you'll carry on with your goals. You'll carry on with what your coach is saying, holding you accountable, and you'll be successful.
Yeah. Although I'm not a big fan of walking away from poutine.
Dude, I cannot walk away from poutine.
That's not something you can walk away from. I don't know. That's just me. But
you could have picked anything else, but not poutine.
That was a horrible example, actually.
That was the worst.
Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I like what was just said, because something that also could be added to that is, find yourself a good coach, of course, who can do these things for you. But one of the side benefits of finding a good coach is you just joined a freaking team, even if it's just you and another person. But chances are, if they're a good coach, they've probably got a team behind them, a team of specialists that they can draw down on that you just became part of, a team of athletes that coach coaches that are now your new friends and are going to support you. And here's the worst, best news ever. You ain't going to like it if you're just new to the game, but the moment that you join a good team, that team's going to hold you accountable for sure. But the worst part is you're going to hold yourself accountable for the team. And it's going to suck because you're going to work harder than maybe you've ever worked before, because now you're working for a team. You're doing your best, not for yourself anymore. You're doing your best for the team because you don't want to let them down. And that's a whole different way of delivery. That's a whole different way of accountability. If you haven't been in that for a little while, you should go give it a try, because it's really invigorating. It's really accountable. And if you can just hang on for a few weeks or a couple of months in a team environment where it's not about letting you down, it's about letting the team down, the moment that sinks in, you might just see your velocity or your trajectory go a little exponential. So check it out. Get a good coach with a good team that you can feel accountable to.
Yeah, 100%. And to that point, I just want to throw this in here because this is fantastic. The Rumbler said, shout out to Lou Sassel for always being there as my coach. So, bam. Look at that.
Wow.
I love it. So we are just a bit over time right now. Let's get some final thoughts, and then we will shut her down for the day. John, any final thoughts on anything we've gone over so far?
No, man, just find the positivity in your life and go with it, man. Finding those, all those vices, and starting small, work your way big, but it's all small steps in a positive right direction.
I like it. Steve, any final thoughts?
Find somebody in your life that will be honest with you, not just your cheerleader, because honesty will help you fix something and they won't lie to you. If someone lies to you, they'll never fix anything. The biggest vice that I have seen to date is someone not believing in themselves. Believe more in yourself that you can overcome anything that's in front of you and enjoy life. Problems will be so much smaller in your life.
Dang, dropping bombs at the last second. Love it. Shaun, final thoughts?
Hard to add anything to that. I'd maybe just to play off it a little bit, believe in yourself. And even if you don't, do it because others will believe in you, which encourages them to bring out the best in themselves. So try to be an inspirer rather than a disbeliever.
Yeah. And I really don't have anything to add on to any of that. So I will just say, make sure that every day you learn, you build, and you grow. And you do that with us every day here on The Collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.